This is Eyewitness News up close with Bill Ritter.
Stand up, fight back!
Protests over a Trump administration's detention by its so-called ICE officers. Detention of a young man from Venezuela who is seeking asylum in New York. A 20-year-old who is also a New York City high school student who also had a job to help his mother and siblings. An undocumented worker like nearly 500,000 others in New York. As for Mayor Adams, he says he can't do anything about it.
How could I be any clearer? It didn't happen in school.
This morning, we talked to New York City Councilwoman Alexa Aviles, chair of the council's immigration committee. We also talked to a legal expert on what anxious immigrants can now do as the Trump administration ramps up its crackdown. Also this morning, we remember Charlie Wrangle, the Lion of Harlem, who served 46 years in Congress. He was one of the most powerful members who used his influence to push legislation that helped his community and struggling communities across the country. This morning, an interview I did on Up Close with Congressman Wrangle in 2016, when he was getting ready to finish his last term in Congress after nearly a half a century in Washington.
I could not leave New York if I wanted to.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Up Close. I'm Bill Ritter. The White House is pushing ICE to triple the daily number of arrests of immigrants. While the Trump administration claims that people it is deporting are violent criminals, the sad truth is many immigrants who came here undocumented, but since then followed the rules, are getting caught up. Case in point, Dylan is 20 years old. He came here from Venezuela seeking asylum, like so many others. He was given a date to show up before an immigration judge, and he did just that. The Trump administration ICE agents were there to pick him up at the hearing. He didn't see this coming. He had no idea. He's the first known New York City high school student detained in the immigration crackdown by President Trump. With how this case unfolded and the fears it is sparking among undocumented immigrants who play huge roles in the U.S. economy, we start our show this morning with Alexa Aviles, chair of the Immigration Committee for the New York City Council. And council member, we really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Let's start, first of all, with the case of Dylan. I know you're watching it. We know people who are actually helping him and legally. What is your take on this? What's the city doing? What should we be doing? And what does it mean, the implications for everyone else?
Yeah, this is a heartbreaking situation, that has everyone on edge, because what we have been seeing and what the Trump administration was always clear about was they were not interested in just criminals. They wanted to deport people here who are not citizens, and particularly people from Latin American countries and from Black countries around the world. So it's a really scary situation, because we see now you follow the law, they are breaking the law and just taking people. You don't follow the law, it's considered you're breaking the law, and they're taking people. There seems to be a no-win situation here, and it is horrifying.
There are a lot of people in the sanctuary city and in the sanctuary state of New York. In fact, the city and states inside the tri-state area, all sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. This is a big deal for people. And more importantly, or equally important, I should say, not more importantly, equally important, they play a huge role in the economy here.
Absolutely. On any change, an attack on immigrant communities is an attack on our economy, on our city. Being a sanctuary, the reason why we have sanctuary city policies were for this very situation. We wanted immigrants to be safe and to engage in civic organizations, to go to courts, to be able to go to school without fear of immigration enforcement. And this turns all of that on its head. We must be a sanctuary city, not only in name, but in action. Yeah. And we have to do everything in our power to protect our residents.
This Dylan case has caught people's attention because they took him away. And, he didn't know it was going to happen like that. And all of a sudden, he's in 4 different states, not where he is right now.
Imagine your son just being taken for doing something that he was legally obligated to do. He was following the law. And he was whisked away and sent to 4 different prisons. What an incredible waste of taxpayer dollars.
No question. What's your opinion about how the mayor has reacted to all this? He was very much behind sanctuary cities before. He's less than that right now.
Well, I mean, we see the mayor living up to his bargain with the Trump administration. In a quid pro quo fashion, he was able to get himself out of being charged for his own corruption, and now he's suddenly the mayor that can't do anything. So, if he can't protect New Yorkers and doesn't have our interests first and foremost, he should not be the mayor of this great city.
Ms. Aviles, I have one more question for you, and it's breaking news. We're taping this on Friday for Sunday, and I wanted to just fill you in on what's happening. The High Court, the Supreme Court of the United States, says that the president can, at least for now, remove 500,000 immigrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, even though they are here and were brought here and said they could stay for 2 years at least, and maybe more. What's the impact? What's your reaction to that? And what do you think the impact is going to be on people in New York who are from some of those states, those countries?
Yeah, I mean, this is horrendous. It is such an affront to our role and responsibility, to the system that we've developed, to the communities that have made this country their home and have really built it. It is horrifying what is happening, and we should not be okay with any of this. It's very sad that the Supreme Court has made this kind of decision. Quite frankly, it's going to spark fear and panic in communities. It is awful. It will upend our economy as well.
Well, you're going to have your work cut out for you for the rest of the year.
We certainly do.
Exactly. Alexa Aviles, chair of the Immigration Committee for the New York City Council, we thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your insight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. Joining us now, the president and CEO of the New York Immigration Coalition, Murad Awada. And Murad, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I want to get your take on the High Court's ruling that the President Trump, can, in fact, at least for now, he can remove 500,000 immigrants from several countries, Cuba, Haiti, I should say, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Were you surprised by the court's ruling? And what does this mean for 500,000 people?
We don't agree with the Supreme Court's decision that they just issued today on the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan parole program that was issued, which is going to harm nearly 500,000 people. This comes 2 weeks after the Supreme Court also affirmed that Donald Trump can end temporary protected status without going through the proper channels to do so. In total, within the past 2 weeks, the Supreme Court is allowing this administration to strip over 1 million people of their legal status in this country. And this is going to harm people, not just here in the city, the state of New York, but across this country. People who have been building their lives, working and, contributing to our country. This is just a really bad decision by the Supreme Court. And it just adds more to the urgency of the moment that we find ourselves in, and why local and state governments need to step up and start protecting immigrants better.
I want to get a better sense of what you do when people come here and say, hey, I'm in trouble, Murad. What do I do? What are their options? I mean, can they say, look, I'm going to go in, or they're going to run away?
Some people will unfortunately be pushed into the shadows. Just to remind people about the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan program, this was a program where people who were already in the United States, family, friends, loved ones, would sponsor people to come into the country from their home country and provide them with the support that they need to get integrated into our society. It was a 2-year parole program with the option to renew it. And what the Trump administration is trying to do is end it and put these people's lives at risk. What we would urge people to do, if you live in the state of New York, is to call the Office of New Americans and seek out a legal consultation so that you can understand what your options are, and ensuring that they are, continuing to seek other relief if they are eligible for it.
You said they were protected for 2 years. These people work very hard. They pay their taxes. Their kids go to school, all that, and they're part of the economy here. Without them, what happens to the economy?
I think we're going to start seeing prices increase for goods and services. We're going to start seeing, longer lines. We're going to start seeing people really not having the supports that they need. A lot of immigrants are in the agricultural industry. And just to give you an example of that one industry, it's $1 trillion industry here in this country.
Yeah.
About 70% of its workforce are immigrants. And we're going to see that industry be hurt pretty hard. So as well as the construction industry and the healthcare industry, where immigrants make a great deal of the workers in those fields. So, the things that people can't afford are food. They can't afford their rent. They can't afford, healthcare. And these are the areas where these people are working. And we're just going to see things spiral even more out of control in those industries.
Murad, you told me that earlier that you are working on this case that is getting certainly on our newscast every day, and it's got a lot of people very upset. This is the big controversy involving 20-year-old immigrant from Venezuela. Dylan is his name, and we're showing a picture of it right there. He works for his family here in New York. He has been here legally, and he's going to school in New York High School. And now he's gone to 4 different states because he was ripped out of our city. What's the status of him? What are you doing? And where's he gonna end up here?
We're working with his legal representation, the New York Lawyers Assistance Group, NYLAG, to ensure that we continue to fight for his release. Dylan is a New York City high school student who was working part-time to help his mom pay the bills and take care of his younger siblings. He was doing everything right, in the right way. He was showing up to immigration court, and because he showed up without an immigration attorney at the time, unfortunately, ICE was able to entrap him and arrest him and put him into expedited removal, even if he's not eligible for that. So it's really disheartening to see the federal government continue to be, run amok of our laws. And, really, we're living in an incredibly dangerous moment where people's due process rights are being violated on a daily basis. And Dylan, unfortunately, is not the only person who has had to face this. We're seeing many other people showing up to immigration court here in New York City and in Buffalo and across the country who are faced with the same fate as Dylan was.
A big challenge for so many people, and a challenge for you and your organizations. A lot of people depending on you. The President and CEO of the New York Immigration Coalition, Murad Awada, I can't thank you enough for joining us, and good luck to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. We take a different turn on Up Close because our show, we know, on Sunday mornings typically focus on the current state of politics. There's no shortage of that, to be sure, as we've seen so far. But right now, we want to take a moment or two to remember someone who was the state of politics for decades, and he made a difference. New York Congressman Charlie Wrangle died this past week. He was 94. He was a son of Harlem, a high school dropout, and a Korean War veteran who went on to become a very powerful political force and the dean of the New York congressional delegation. He was the first black chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and one of the most influential members of Congress during his 46-year career. Oh, he had one moment in the spotlight that he would like to do over, but Charlie Wrangle's sense of fighting for equality and leveling the playing field always stood out. And he helped shape some of those consequential pieces of legislation.
I'll never forget how he took the lead on this idea I had for enterprise zones, to get people to invest in urban areas and bring them back, and it worked, and he got the first one. He was a real patriot, a real hero, and a profoundly good man.
Charlie Wrangle, who was known as the Lion of Lenox Avenue, was the last living member of the so-called Gang of Four, a coalition from Harlem that back in the day wielded great power and influence in New York City and state politics. Charlie Wrangle appeared on this Up Close show so many times over the years, including back in October 2016 as he was just finishing his last term, and he talked about his wife.
Like so many of us, I really married above my class. She married me when I was in school. I didn't even know anybody with a college degree, And sometimes when she get annoyed with me, she says, I admire you work so much, Charlie, but you got too much of Harlem, too much Lenox Avenue, no class. And I said, I didn't need class. I married you. That's enough class to get through. And the boys accepted it that way. My family accepted it that way, and we're still together over 50 years.
You were born in Harlem. You went to school here in New York.
Yeah.
You served for New York. You still live there. You going to stay there? You going to move somewhere else?
My wife told me that when I proposed, I promised to retire where she was born in Panama City, Florida. I said, Alma, when I was young, I used to drink, but I never really drank that much to think. I could not leave New York if I wanted to. The air, the noise, crickets drive me crazy, just the silence. And so I'll go any place she wants, but I got to get back here. I can't go anyplace else.
As long as you hear police sirens and ambulances and fire trucks.
I love it. I live right across the street from a hospital, I never hear those ambulances.
When you look back, Congressman, at everything you've done, I mean, starting when, as a congressman, as a freshman congressman, one of the co-founders of the Black Congressional Caucus, all the things you've done, your high point in Congress and your low point. I can guess what the low point is, but what's your high point, do you think?
It's hard to say. Which big fire did you put out when you were a fireman? It was the last one. It's always the last one. When Mandela said that it was my bill, the bloody Wrangle Amendment, that forced the U.S. firms to get the hell on out of apartheid, when President Clinton signed the empowerment the zone, which rebuilt my community and communities like it, the earned income tax credit, which said if you work and you under poverty level, don't give up your job, we'll supplement it. And I guess really the low-income housing credit, which 90% of low-income housing is the bill. But it's like a rocket. You keep getting these charges, and I never look back. And I think my family's, I can't say suffered, but there's so many things I have an opportunity to make up.
Wow, he made such a difference in so many people's lives. Charlie Wrangle met Alma Carter on the dance floor of the Savoy Ballroom in Harlem. They married in July 1964. They were partners, and they stayed married for 60 years. 2 children, 3 grandsons. Alma died last year. Charlie was so heartbroken. How could he not be? So many things to remember about Charlie Wrangle. One thing that sticks in my mind about Charlie was how he could disagree with his elected counterparts in person or on air, and when they finished the discussion, when that was over, he would shake their hand and then they'd go out to lunch. It wasn't that long ago. We could really use some of that behavior and discussion right about now. Charlie, rest in peace. Just ahead, we talk to our political team about Charlie Wrangle, about the Trump tariff, legal battles, and a whole lot more. That's next. Welcome back to Up Close. Let's get right to our political team. ABC News Washington Bureau Chief Rick Klein and veteran political consultant Hank Scheinkoff. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Before we get to all the politics, Hank, I want to talk, we've been talking about paying tribute to Congressman Wrangle, and I found out that you were the one who came up with the Gang of Four. And he was a youngster and everyone else was a little older.
Well, it was Walter Diamond and I, and it was a political operative. And we looked at Harlem, and they were trying to block the Puerto Ricans, which was what was going on. The battle in those years was between Puerto Ricans and blacks in New York City. And the Gang of Four stopped Herman Badillo effectively from becoming the mayor. So we called them the Gang of Four, and that stuck. And it's been with me throughout the years. And Basil Patterson blamed me for it, may rest in peace. But Charlie was a good man, very kind to my family, and should be remembered as a great, great pioneer beyond anything else, and a guy who had the guts to take on power whenever it interfered with his constituency.
The one thing that always got to me was that he would debate anybody in this chair, in these chairs, Rick, and he would have it'd be a brawling kind of thing verbally, but always gentle and nice, and they would stop after it was done rolling, and then all of a sudden they went out to lunch.
The greatest smile in the history of the world.
Well, but why?
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore, right?
Yeah, it's really effectively gone in Washington now. When I first got to Washington covering Capitol Hill for the Boston Globe 20 years ago, he was one of the most memorable people that I would interact with. And he'd be there in the speaker's lobby and that Mr. Speaker, that voice of his. And the way he interacted with other members, younger members, Republicans, people paid him respect. Even when he was in the depths of scandal toward the end of his career, people deferred to Charlie Wrangle because they knew that he represented something larger and institutionally something that really is gone. The idea that you're the chairman now, but you might be in the minority later, and you owe deference and you owe respect to people on the other side is really a lost art.
When Donald Trump was elected, I called Charlie and I said, we would like to get you on up close and talk about all this. And he goes, my first instinct, and his wife had died 3 months before, after all those years, 1964 to 2024. He said, I'm not sure. I'm angry, and I don't want to be angry on television, and so let me think about this for a while. And I kept talking to him for about a week or so, and he just said, I can't do it. Yeah. I can't do it. Different breed.
Mark of the man.
Yeah.
Mark of the man who came into power at a time when power was needed. Yeah. For good, did his best. Was a politician. Harlem was Tammany Hall in Manhattan. I mean, that's the way it was. And he understood how to use that power. All right, and he did a lot of things.
Let's talk about power that is causing a lot of ripples these days. What has happened in this last week? Courts have gone against Donald Trump once again, this time about the economy.
Yeah, and the tariff agenda, which is so central to the tax bill and to the whole Trump negotiating stance around the world, is now paused, stopped in its tracks by two different courts who are challenging different parts of the tariff authority. And, how Trump reacts to this, of course, he's going to attack the judges. He's going to try to use other authorities that may or may not get blocked. This is going to end up in the Supreme Court. And the question about whether the legislative branch steps in, I think, is pretty much settled. They're not going to, in all likelihood. But the judicial branch stands now as the most important guardrail on what's going on. And look, there's a lot of consequences on this economically. The tariff money that has been flowing in would stop entirely. I don't know how investors are supposed to process this news because it's all over the place. And as a political matter, I think he's going to take a case against the courts, and he's not going to stop trying to push an agenda that increases negotiating leverage.
Are the people who voted for Trump going to go against him? That's really the bottom line question.
Depends how much pain they feel. It depends whether they're going to accept that pain. And that is the real question. It also depends what the alternatives are. You can't have an electric vote for no one. If there's no alternative that makes sense, they're going to do exactly what they did the last time.
And there's been a breakup in Washington, I guess. All right. Mr. Elon Musk breaking up with one Donald Trump. I don't think he's going to get a pension in all this, right? Maybe he doesn't need it.
Yeah.
But what does it mean, do you think?
Well, I think there's still an open question as to whether he dumped Trump or Trump dumped him, right? We saw a turn in his fortunes happen after the first couple of months where he was just dominating, literally with that chainsaw on stage. And he went out under much different circumstances. Politically wounded, economically wounded, and that the brand hit that he's still going to be fine as a billionaire many times over. But I think he was disenchanted with politics, and politics was disenchanted with him a bit too. And he's leaving with a grade of incomplete. I don't know if we're going to know the full extent of what Doge did and what the impact is for quite some time, frankly.
He didn't like what happened with the passage of this bill.
Look, he didn't like a lot of things because he couldn't control it. And that's really what this is about. A self-made billionaire wanted to control everything, couldn't get the cuts he wanted, wasn't satisfied with it at all.
You have to be elected president if you're a billionaire nowadays to have that happen, right? Isn't that the other thing? I have another question as well. A federal judge on Thursday extended the order of blocking the Trump administration from barring Harvard University international students. He pushed it back even longer. That's also another slap.
Yeah, and again, it's the courts standing here. And in this one, the administration actually tried to back down a little bit and say, look, let's get our legal ducks in a row before we go further. But you've seen them chip away, particularly at Harvard, I think, trying to make an example out of Harvard. This, I think, more than even the federal funding, would harm not just Harvard, but any university, because the idea of attracting international talent is important to their international standing as well as to their finances. And in this case, the courts are objecting to the idea that any institution would get singled out like this, and they don't view this as an appropriate use of federal authority.
Yeah. Good last word, Henry.
Hey, it's about the elites, and it's about the Trump people trying to destroy them, and that's what the Harvard thing's about. He wants to show that he can beat the elites back in Boston, in Washington, and in New York. And he's going to win that argument as of today. But he's not going to win in the courts.
This is not yet over, and we'll be talking about it. Great to have both of you in our new studio together for the first time, so that's wonderful.
Great to be here.
I remember our old studio, not that long ago. Okay. Rick, Hank, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
And we'll be right back. That's going to do it for this edition of Up Close. Tiempo with Joe Torres is coming up next. If you missed any of today's programs, not to worry. I'll post today's segments on my Facebook page tomorrow. And of course, you can always watch our new podcast, although it's not so new anymore, on any of our platforms. Thank you all for watching. I'm Bill Ritter. For all of us here at Channel 7 Eyewitness News, we do wish you health and peace. And let's take care of each other.